everyone, welcome to DMALA. I'm Nadia Hernandez, and today we've got some of the DMALA crew here with Michael and Warren. Do you guys have any announcements to make before we get started?
Oh, I've got a quick one. You may have noticed on our Facebook page under DMALA, I put a link up for a senior designer position at CBS. There is definitely need to fill that spot. We are crazy busy. So I urge you to find that link if you're interested. I urge you to find that link and let me know you've applied so I can let some key people know. Just be ready for it to be really busy. That's all I have to say. Great group of people to work with. It's all remote right now. It may even stay remote. So that's still up in the air. And of course, if you have any questions, shoot those my way as well.
Nice. All right, so we're super excited and honored to introduce our illustrious guest, Wren Weichman from Corridor Digital. Hey, Wren, how's it going?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We're good.
Good.
Doing good.
All right.
So are you working on anything that you're super excited right now? Do you got anything cooking?
Yes, in fact, I'm cooking up a new scale video. This has been probably the hardest scale video I've ever worked on. I started working on it 3.5 years ago.
Wow.
It was the second idea I ever came up with, and I tried and failed to write this video 4 different times. So right now, this is my 5th attempt, and I've gone so far into it that there's a release date for the video, and I'm just trying to hit it.
Nice.
The idea is basically how many solar panels could power the world. I'm going to not only visually represent that from the small scale of like a city to a country to the world, but also kind of help educate what that means to even be a society based on renewable energy. What do we have to do to kind of like make that happen at like a core fundamental level, and a lot of hypotheticals, because I don't have all the answers. I struggled a lot with trying to find some of these answers. The math stuff, that's easy, but figuring out what to talk about and what to include, that's been proven to be the biggest challenge. But, you know, sometimes you got to do those really important ones so that you can also have the fun Attack on Titan ones.
There you go. Yeah.
Can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Can you give us a hint to how many solar panels it actually is?
Oh,
I remember something
22.8 billion solar panels
20 for the whole world, right?
for the whole world.
I remember something about Death Valley could accommodate enough solar panels to power like all of California.
Probably, yeah.
And that's something from when I was in 5th grade. So
No,
I guess it's on my generation growing up that we didn't.
There
make
is
that happen.
so much
We're
energy
adults
from
now.
the sun. Yeah, there's so much that we get from the sun that there's just plenty of energy that's just out there for the taking. People always think you need just like countries completely covered in solar panels in order to have enough, solar to power the world. When in reality, it's like small spoilers to power the entire country of America. You just need like a 22-mile strip of land the length of the Texas Panhandle. So it's like not that much. It's more for the world, obviously.
Looking forward to seeing how your project comes out. Definitely.
Me too. Yeah.
Cool. So let's get the ball rolling and let's show one of the more recent videos that you guys have done recently with Attack on the Titans.
Sure.
I love this opening shot.
Oh, hey, wow. Thanks for joining me. I'm starting to get pretty lonely in here. I just wanted to talk about my favorite anime, Attack on Titan.
It's a brutal story about the last of humanity living behind massive walls that protect their civilization. Because on the other side are horrifying giant monsters called Titans, whose only desire in life is to eat people alive. They're also incredibly weird. In fact, they tend to be straight up comically bizarre. These big-eyed creatures are not the classic monsters you might be used to seeing, though it's exactly their uncanny nature that makes these Titans so effectively terrifying.
But in today's video, I wanted to give you a taste of what it would really look like if Titans were real. I'll do my best to avoid story spoilers and will only be pulling from the anime shown so far, as opposed to the manga source material, so you won't be seeing any fish bones here. The Titans range from 3 meters tall to 15 meters tall, and usually generally humanoid in shape. The proportions can be kind of crazy. I mean, just take a look at this gluttonous dude right here. Look at him. Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no! But a cool twist to this type of story comes from the addition of what are called Titan shifters. They're people who can turn into massive specialized Titans at will, and these Titans, oh man, they are awesome.
They're basically giant mech suits, the same that you'd see in Pacific Rim or Gundam Wing or even Power Rangers. But these guys are fleshy. They even have their own little fleshy pilot cabins. It's the idea of a mech suit as a superpower. And when they fight, they tend to reduce their surroundings to rubble, so they're obviously really big.
By the nature of them being animated, it's kind of hard to discern their true scale. How big are these Titans really?
Well, the show often reminds us exactly what the scale of the world is.
It's gotta be 14 meters.
7-meter Titan.
17 meters tall.
2 15-meter Titans!
4-meter companion Sani.
We know that the main character, Eren Yeager, has a Titan form that is 15 meters tall. And if he existed in real life, this is what he would look like, towering over these industrial buildings of Los Angeles. Another Titan shifter is Eren's biggest rival, the Armored Titan. Although much wider and more built, he's the same height as the Attack Titan, and the rivalry between these two is pretty awesome. You wouldn't want to be anywhere nearby when they start fighting.
The creator of Attack on Titan, Hajime Isayama, is said to have designed Eren's Titan after the professional fighter Yushin Okamai, and I definitely see the resemblance. The Attack Titan's basically just a bigger version of him. And that got me wondering how big humans can actually be. For some context, Okamai and I are both about 6'2", even though the average male height is about 5'9". Levi Ackerman, on the other hand, is 5'3". Yet, despite his short stature, he's easily the coolest character in the entire show. But to be considered an actual real live giant, you have to be at least 7 feet tall. Like the most famous example, the Kazam legend Shaquille O'Neal. It is absurdly rare to be as tall as him. In fact, you are 5 times more likely to be struck by lightning than to be as tall as Shaq. But there's only one person who can hold the record for the tallest person of all time. And that was Robert Madlow, standing at almost 9 feet tall. His height made him famous,
so hard to do.
and he even toured with the Ringling Brothers Circus. Perhaps unsurprisingly though, he also holds the record for the largest hands and feet of any person in recorded history. Sadly though, his size caused multiple health complications, and he ended up dying at the age of 22. The human body struggles to work correctly when it's this big. But why is this? So close! It's incredibly easy to imagine a giant. You just think of a person, but bigger. The problem is that when you scale something up, the physics don't scale up the same way. For example, strength is determined by the cross-sectional area of something. The more cross-sectional area you have, the more strength you have. It's why bones are easier to break this way than that way. However,
ironically, I
the mass of
broke
an
my
object is
collarbone
determined by its
halfway
volume.
through this video
As an
after
object
doing
gets
that
bigger,
moment.
it gets heavier faster than it gets stronger. The strength increases by the square, but the mass increases by the cube. And the difference between these two numbers increases exponentially. In physics, this is what is called the square-cubed law. As things get bigger, strength just can't keep up with the weight gain, so you have to compensate. This is the exact reason why elephants have such thick legs to hold up their heavy bodies. And it's also the exact reason why the largest animal in the world, the blue whale, can only exist with the buoyant force of water holding it up. Attack on Titan explains all this away by simply saying the Titans weigh a lot less than they should. It actually kind of makes sense if you want your Titans to realistically hold their shape. And considering how fictional the show is, it's an appreciated effort.
Now there's one more Titan that I haven't talked about yet. The largest one, the Colossal Titan. He debuts in the first episode by smashing a hole in the outer wall, literally kickstarting the story as a flood of mindless Titans enter the city. The Colossal Titan is truly gargantuan. It's portrayed as a living skyscraper towering over everything as it lays waste to it all. So how big is the Colossal Titan? He's listed at being 60 meters tall. Now that's huge. However, when we start thinking in relative terms, he becomes a little less imposing. For example, this is a football field, and And this is the Colossal Titan. At less than 200 feet tall, he wouldn't even come close to the full height of the Statue of Liberty, which most New Yorkers will tell you isn't really all that big. For them, it's just that little thing off in the distance, you know? Now here's something that blew my mind. Remember that little boat that got stuck? Well, the Colossal Titan could lay down on that ship sideways. Like, I'm talking without sticking out on either side or hanging off at all. This really makes the Titan look tiny. Although, to be honest, I think this is more just a testament to how huge these ships are than anything else. I mean, this ship is larger than the Empire State Building. And if you want to find out how it got stuck, I recommend checking out Practical Engineering. If you've seen Godzilla vs. King Kong, you're already familiar with the two most famous Titans that humanity has come up with Kong over 100 meters tall and Godzilla at 120 meters. Godzilla is literally twice as tall as the Colossal Titan, and I don't know how to feel about that. They would probably just kind of ignore him as a nuisance.
So then why does the Colossal Titan appear so colossal? We touched on this in an episode of Animators React.
For one, the show can get away with things you can't in real life because it's a cartoon. You can exaggerate different scales by simply having different field of views for the foreground versus the background. Also, intentionally making something appear larger builds a sense of tension and visual drama when you have to face an unfathomably large opponent. They take this even further by making the Attack Titan appear tiny when he's trying to fight back.
Like, he literally looks like this tall.
Like, seriously, look at him! He's barely as tall as the first floor of the building. How is any of this to scale?
A more common example of this idea is the wall surrounding humanity. It's a 50-meter wall, which is certainly a huge wall as far as walls go.
However, the way it's depicted in the show makes it appear like it's the wall from Game of Thrones. And you'd totally be forgiven for thinking they're the same size. However, the wall from Game of Thrones is over 4 times larger than the wall from Attack on Titan.
That's well over 3 times taller than the Colossal Titan. He would not be able to scale that wall. Although it is the Colossal Titan, he's a very hot dude. Maybe he could just lean up against the wall and just melt through it. I don't know what I'm saying here. Listen, we've all seen airplanes before. You know the Boeing 747? Imagine leaning that against the wall of Attack on Titan.
But now notice how the houses are way smaller than the plane. See, this is what I'm talking about. They say the wall is 50 meters tall, but then they visualize it being like 200 meters tall.
But you know what? I get it. No one actually cares about the discrepancy in size consistency across multiple episodes. It's about the emotional impact of the imagery. When it comes to anime, I would take that any day for the sake of being cooler and more impactful. Part of why I love Attack on Titan so much is that, regardless of how dark the story can get, it's about perseverance. It's about not giving up in the face of adversity. No matter what happens, keep moving forward. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you tuning in. This one had a lot of CGI in it, so I wanted to give our friends at Puget Systems a shout out because even though we're crunched on time, we're able to still make stupid stuff like that. I mean, there's no reason for this shot to exist, and yet there it is. And to be completely honest, like, our whole studio is outfitted with Puget Systems at this point. They make our lives so easy. Like, you don't have to know how to build a computer at all, and if you do, they save you so much time by testing it. They figure out the best computer to fit your needs. For instance, we've got several computers with 3090s in them now, and we even got AMD Ryzen processors. We've got 64 cores ripping all kinds of threads around here. So thank you again to Puget Systems for making that happen, and thanks to you for watching this video. If you want to share this video, that would be the best way to help us. And in the meantime, try to think about what I should do next time. I'm curious to see what you think. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
Nice.
Awesome. I am really proud of that video. I feel like the team that I worked with on that really, killed it on it.
Yeah, those monsters were so creepy. I'm like totally gonna get nightmares.
Yeah, I mean it's a bit of a subtle theme of the show is that like they have these like big human things. That's creepy.
Well, I noticed that there's a lot of math. I noticed a lot of math involved in what you do. So, are you obviously you're not a math major? I don't know that for sure, but I mean, like doing things to scale seems to be a very important part of that. I love that. And as a graphic designer, as a visual artist, I'm surprised how much math I use every single day. So it was definitely apparent there.
Yeah, it's amazing. how much math we actually use in a day-to-day basis. You have like those people who complain in algebra class in middle school, like, when am I ever going to use this in the real world? It's like a lot of the stuff we learn in math class perhaps isn't specifically applicable in daily life. However, the fact that you've learned it at some point just makes your math part of your brain stronger. And so when you do have to do a lot of real world math, totaling up any numbers for, finances or taxes or what have you, whatever it is, everyone deals with numbers at some point. Having that experience
or a math puzzle
goes a long way. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So myself, I was never like the biggest fan of math, but I ended up getting an engineering degree, so I was forced to take a lot of math classes. I wasn't very good at them, but I got by. So these scale videos were basically a way for me to kind of just take different concepts that are perhaps easy to understand, but not well understood, if that makes sense. So it's like, we are constantly seeing how big these creatures are in Attack on Titan, and yet, like, we don't have the perspective for what that really means or what that looks like. So most of the math I ever do, it's like 99% just like unit conversion. It's like, how many kilowatt hours is megajoules or what, I'm converting numbers is most of the time of what I'm doing.
Got it.
Yeah.
So how do you come up with ideas to create these videos? Are you just like watching TV and you're like, oh, that would be like a cool one? Or like, are you like kind of striving to meet like goals of coming up with the videos?
I have a list of different ideas I jot down anytime I find inspiration. Sometimes I'm sitting there trying hard to come up with something, and then I actually think of something miraculously in that moment. But most of the time it's sitting around watching TV, watching YouTube videos, playing video games, riding around town on a bike or one wheel. And you can find inspiration from anywhere because your brain starts going down these rabbit holes. You're just thinking about something, and the thing that inspires me most is anytime I realize something that kind of just surprises me. Surprise is probably the key emotion I'm trying to capitalize on. Not necessarily like curiosity or learning something new. It's like, oh, I didn't know that. I'm now thinking about this whole thing differently now. That leaves you with a sense of, I don't know what it leaves you with, but basically it's an emotion that you're left with, and it's powerful. It's a lot like fear, but I think of it as the antithesis to fear, because fear is what the media uses to get people hooked. I'm trying to use surprise to get people hooked. And so to answer your question about how I come up with ideas, it's hard to say. Sometimes I will literally just be reading an article. I'll be watching a YouTube video and I'll be like, wait, really? Really? That's how it is? And I start looking into it, and like, for instance, the solar panel video that I'm working on right now, I mentioned earlier, that kind of just started when I was just reading an article about like how much sunlight hits the earth. I was blown away to learn just the sheer magnitude of how much energy is literally just out there for the taking for free. In general, obviously it costs money to develop the generation to harness that energy. But the point is that blew my mind. And so when I think of ideas, I try to condense those concepts into very digestible ideas that work well in a visual format. And that is how a video gets made. Or at least that's how a video is born.
Dope.
Very cool. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, I've got so many different ideas. I get people like recommending ideas to me sometimes, but they oftentimes lack a little bit of the character that makes that idea interesting. It could be an interesting concept, but maybe it's like it's too narrow in its scope, or maybe it doesn't apply to enough things. Another idea I've been playing with that I'd like to do at some point soon is kind of visualizing data and like storage sizes of like our bits and whatnot. Like talk about like a floppy disk, what people nowadays refer to as the save button. That was like 1.5 megabytes of storage, and that was pretty big back in the day. And now it's like our phones, every single photo we take is
800 kilobytes at first.
Yeah, right. So,
and then 1.4 megabytes.
Yeah.
Until you formatted it. But.
Totally, yeah. So I was like, it would be kind of cool to show what would 1 billion floppy disks look like, and that would be like how much would that be? Like a terabyte?
Yeah.
No, that'd be 100 or it'd be 1,000 terabytes.
Yeah, you probably have to do the
I'm
first.
not good at doing math on the fly.
It's moving at a decimal point, but I'd have to write it out to visualize it, to figure that one
Yeah,
out.
exactly. I mean, same
Yeah.
with me. You know, I'm making these videos, and yet I'm still just unable to actually do that math in my head.
Yeah. You'd probably have to do the first 5 minutes on what a floppy disk is.
I know,
you go.
right?
Oh, so we have a question from Anissa, and she says, or they, what's been the most rewarding video you've produced? Learning process, change in thought process, etc.
So I've done a lot of videos over the last 10 years of making YouTube videos, right? Probably one of the most rewarding personally were two videos that were probably my favorite that I've done ever were very much so not visual effects related at all. They're both 3D printing related. One, which I personally found just super cool because I thought it was like so dope. I built from scratch a drone that was also a Nerf blaster. And I could literally pilot it with my FPV goggles and fly it around and shoot darts from it with the flip of a switch. And I think the story around that turned out really well. The second video that I think might be the coolest video I've ever done, or the most rewarding specifically, is the video where I 3D printed a new finger for my friend who lost his finger. And I mean, I didn't really do too much for that technically. I didn't like model anything. I used someone else's design or the program that generates the design, and we worked together to get a good fit. But that was an example of something where I actually made something for a friend who continues to this day. We did that a year ago. To this day, he still wears it every day. And it's gotten to the point that now he's gotten into 3D printing, and he has printed out 18 different finger sets across different colors.
Oh, that's
of
crazy.
filament. So he's got one for every color of the rainbow for whatever outfit he has. It's super cool.
Did you
What
just
what
cast
finger
it
is
from
it?
one hand for the other
This is
hand?
pinky finger.
Oh, nice.
Sorry, Warren, what was your question?
Did you just cast one hand for the other hand? Like, so since this pinky's no longer here, did you just use the other one? Like,
No. There's
Or
there's this website called Thingiverse that's basically a stock footage website for 3D models that you can 3D print. And this guy had uploaded basically a finger model that has channels for little threads of cord. So you could pull on one side to curl the finger in.
oh, so it was actually mechanical and functions.
Exactly, yeah. And it looks
okay.
like a cyberpunk like mechanical thing made out of plastic and metal and Teflon thread and whatnot. It's pretty cool. Yeah, and it works. So anytime he does this, because he's got the nub of his finger, so if he does this, it actually curls up. So he can do stuff like this, which is pretty sweet.
Oh, that's so nice of you.
Yeah.
I found that one more rewarding than the other videos that I actually put far more time and effort into. Like that Attack on Titan video is like a month of my life, pretty much overtime every day. That one was very personally satisfying as an artist, but rewarding, I feel, implies a little bit more of heart to it, you know?
Definitely.
You know, how'd you make the jump from studying to be an engineer to doing what you're doing now?
Good question. Nice to meet you guys. Talk to you later. Yeah, so I was in college. Well, it started in high school. I kind of started getting into video editing. I had like a video editing class, so I started editing some stuff. In college, I discovered a website called videocopilot.net, which had a tremendous free resource of After Effects tutorials. And at the time, I didn't even know you could do visual effects on like a computer that wasn't in a studio or something like that. So that blew my mind, and I was instantly hooked. It was my hobby. I would spend every waking moment outside of school and studying and doing homework, just watching tutorials. I watched every single tutorial on the website before I even installed After Effects. It was like 120 videos at the time, I think. Anyway, so I started getting into it as like a hobby, started getting more and more, making more and more videos that were essentially just visual effects tests that were starting to evolve into more and more short film style videos. And then I was inspired by a couple different YouTube channels that came up in 2010, 2011 called Freddie W. and Corridor Digital. I was a very big fan. I loved what they did and was incredibly inspired by what they were doing. They were making what they wanted to make, just random, just fun, super cool short films with a little bit of really cool visual effects and CGI thrown in. And I was like, yes, that's the coolest thing ever. I'm going to do that. But I had 2 months until I graduated college. So I just went ahead and graduated. I finished. So that summer, I pretty much immediately was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to start trying to make YouTube videos. I started doing that. I got the attention of Corridor, and I ended up at the end of the year moving down to Los Angeles without any plan. I literally lived in my car for a few days in the Whole Foods parking lot because they had security that didn't mind that I was chilling there. Anyway, then very shortly after that, I started working with Corridor, and that was around 10 years ago, 10 years ago. So I've just been doing that ever since. And so I've technically never used my engineering diploma, but the learning that I took from that, I use all the time. And that's probably most evident in all of these science-y scale videos that I produce now. Yeah. I just liked it more. I didn't want to sit in a cubicle designing a bolt to go into an airplane for the 900th time, doing thermal testing and stress testing and finite element analysis and all this stuff. That would be so boring.
That's understandable.
It's important work.
It's important. Yeah, exactly.
But not my style.
Yeah.
Do you make VFX for like any video games or like VR or AR stuff?
Not really. So I'd say the vast majority of the visual effects I do is for video, whether that's on YouTube or perhaps Instagram or whatever social media thing. It's usually a 2D thing. I would love to actually start experimenting with VR content. I think there needs to be kind of a certain like critical threshold of a user base before making virtual reality content designed for being viewed in VR or AR becomes feasible. You know, it's like on the internet, making videos is an economy of views, right? The more views you get, the more of a business you can have. If you're not getting any views, there's no business. And so if there's no one to watch your VR video, there's not really anyone to support the business. And we've experimented with some semi VR stuff in the past at Corridor. We've made a bunch of 360 videos. We've made a few 3D videos. We did like a Where's Waldo video. We're talking the beginning of 2016, 5 years ago. It was a 360 thing. It was kind of supposed to be using your phone. You're supposed to look for Waldo. Super simple concept. I think it did really well. But as far as like making content for games, I personally haven't gotten there yet. However, Sam, who is one of the founders of Corridor Digital, he has gotten really into using Unreal Engine over the last couple years and has started doing bigger and bigger projects that utilize that engine. However, the end use is still to make video content. Mm-hmm. It's the idea of just using it's the same reason why they used it on The Mandalorian. You're able to have real-time sets and lighting and rendering that looks pretty good. And then you can actually see that in real time as you're shooting stuff. It changes the entire order of how you go about making a film. And I think that's really fascinating. And once you actually learn how to do that, there's not too much gap between producing that style of content and straight up just making VR content.
That's cool. I mean, I guess you could kind of like ping pong, like you start in one and then go to the other one and then, start one and then go to the other one. You could just kind of like go round and round.
I find that enticing because I'm very much so just like going from one kind of project to the next. They can be completely different things. Like I rarely know what I'm doing 3 months from now, let alone 3 weeks from now. And so sometimes I'm working on a big scale science-y video. Sometimes I'm dressed up as a barbarian acting in front of a green screen for an entire week. Other times I'm doing 3D printing or making an electric bicycle from scratch using 3D printed parts. It's wild.
So there's a lot of like machine learning based software out there, like plugins and standalone software. And it helps a lot with the drudge work. And, it allows VFX artists to focus on the creative process. Is there any software or plugins that you're really excited about or that you wish existed that aren't out there yet?
I can continue talking about this one idea for another 4 hours. Short answer, yes. 100% yes. It's the most exciting area of visual effects going forward, in my opinion, because what they enable us to do is pretty incredible, because they're able to take all of the tedious grunt work and just make it done, you know? One example of something that takes a lot of time right now is rotoscoping. And the tools that have been developed over the last decade have gotten way better. It used to be a very, very manual, tedious process going frame by frame. Then Adobe came out with RotoBrush, which was pretty fantastic at the time, but it was still a very tedious manual frame by frame process, just with some automated steps. And that tool has gotten better over the years. But what we've started seeing recently over the last year, maybe slightly more than a year, is the idea of using machine learning to kind of figure out what is it you want to have cut out. Oh, a person? All right, we're just going to look at thousands and thousands and thousands of hours worth of video of people and having that already cut out to learn from it, so that when I give the machine learning algorithm a shot that I want a person keyed out of, it just already knows. I just say, that person. And it's like, cool, here you go. Sweet. I just saved myself an entire hour by doing this whole rotoscope shot in about 6 seconds. It's great. And that's just one topic. There's all kinds of areas that are very exciting for machine learning to really help elevate artists, because they're still tools. At the end of the day, it's all of this AI stuff that are coming for our jobs, you know? They're all still tools right now. And even when it gets to the point when they're able to actually write full-on scripts that are good, it still takes a knowledgeable artist to understand the context of what makes something good, to choose what to use and then combine it. And that's where the artistic vision is still going to be able to shine. So I have no concern over any sort of machine learning kind of coming up and then, you know, reducing the value of what I am able to bring to the table as an artist, or me, or anyone, right? So let's see, what are some other things? Upscaling. There's this company called Topaz, and they have a program called
Labs. Yeah.
Yes, they have a video upscaling program. I think it's literally called Video Upscaler.
Video Enhance AI, I think is.
Yeah, and
it enhances it and it upscales it.
Yeah, and you know, when you upscale something normally, there you have 1 pixel that is now getting stretched to 4 pixels, and using some random like blurring math, it's able to kind of figure out how the average of those pixels to kind of make it look, but you're not actually increasing any detail. If you have a 480p shot, even if you scale it up to 4K or 8K, it's still going to be 480p. But what Topaz has done, and I'm sure countless other papers are being written around this sort of topic in, you know, machine learning algorithms, it actually rebuilds the image from scratch by, of course, again, it was trained on a whole bunch of information to build that up, so it knows how to rebuild each pixel. So instead of just averaging it out, it's like, okay, it looks at the context of the image, the contrast in these areas, the lighting and luminance values of different areas, and it's able to actually say, okay, if we're upscaling from 1080p to 4K, that's 4 times higher resolution. Each pixel needs to have 4 new pixels around it. And instead of just blurring it out and averaging it, it actually creates 4 individual pixels that it thinks should be there if it was to be shot in 4K. And so you end up with much sharper images. So I've literally taken footage. We did this James Bond video a couple months ago, and we managed to get some footage of one of the old James Bond movie. I don't know which one it was. It was with Sean Connery. Low resolution, old quality footage, and I stretched it up to 4K and did some enhancing, and suddenly it looked incredibly clear. Yeah, it's just kind of nuts.
Yep.
Yeah, Topaz Labs, they have their product for video. They have a similar product that's just for still images.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
But it's very impressive. Where their product stood out to me was, I'm used to an up conversion. I'm used to doing a textless version of something. So you have the texted version where the text is rendered in. Hopefully you also have a textless version. Then you up convert that, and then you recreate the text at the higher resolution. So the live action picture looks pretty good, and the text looks even better. Because as great as like detail preserving up conversion in After Effects is, it's great with it's good with video for like one jump up, but if there's rendered text into that, it's going to look terrible.
Yeah.
And to get through this a little quicker, Topaz Labs, when I ran through, I had an old PSA I had worked on a long time ago that I thought, okay, I'll try this. It was 720 by 486. And blowing that up to 1920 by 1080, it looked fantastic. Like I was like, with the type and everything, without having to strip the type out. And I was like, okay, I've got to have this product. So now we just sold Topaz Labs. So
yes.
I'm going to have to bug them to let us give a copy of it away.
For real.
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing about machine learning is that it can learn anything. It literally does not matter what it is as long as you have the right kind of training material. If you want to do some randomly obscure video thing, if you've already done a bunch of it and you have like a catalog that you can literally just throw it into the ingredients mix for the machine learning to kind of figure out, it will then be able to do it. Probably very rudimentary. It requires a lot of information to actually get any good, but there's so many people working on this problem right now that all kinds of random different machine learning programs are starting to come up. So I absolutely 100% believe that that's going to be the biggest area of growth in visual effects over the next 10 years. I mean, we've been seeing that with deepfakes. Runway ML is probably my favorite machine learning platform. It hosts a lot of people's models to design with for other people to use or support, and they even make their own models. They're the ones who made that green screen effect, which does probably the best rotoscoping right now, at least publicly available. It's awesome.
How do you find out about these new technologies? Do you go like on any websites, or do these companies reach out to you guys because you're so big?
I mean, why not all the above? Sometimes a lot of companies will reach out to us because of our reach, and they'll pitch us on things for us to use their stuff. Other times, I've got my ear to the ground on a lot of this stuff, so I will just naturally see a lot of this stuff. One of my favorite YouTube channels is called 2 Minute Papers, and this dude specializes in just kind of talking about the experimental research papers that go into a lot of the visual content that we use and see every day. And some of that stuff is still like kind of future based. He's always talking about papers that like, yeah, it's cool, you can do this thing, but there's no consumer facing element to it. So it's not like a program I can just download and use. If they do have the source footage available, which a lot of the times they do, you got to actually be able to know how to use Python to like download the code from GitHub and then run it. And it's a thing. I never really tackle that. I just wait for that to become more of a thing.
That turns into a dead end for me too. So, yeah.
But it's usually a pretty good indication of what's right on the horizon as far as like upcoming capabilities. Photogrammetry is another area of expansion that I think is going to explode over the next 5 or 10 years. We're all going to be able to make incredibly detailed 3D models of everything around us as simply as taking a photo. Just like, oh, that's cool. Take a photo, suddenly I have a 3D model. I can throw 1,000 of them cascading down a cliff as a rigid body sitting on my computer.
Have a really good 3D model.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Right now, it's all, I see Arturo in the chat. He's super into Polycam like I am, and it's probably my favorite app. The reason why I got the iPhone 12 right now is for the LiDAR scanner on it, but I'm very excited because Apple is actually starting to really focus heavily on object capture because they're starting to dive in to, AR using, and hopefully soon VR. And for that, there's got to be content generation pipelines existing for people to use. And so they just announced the new object capture API that will allow people to very easily create 3D models of their surroundings. But it's not quite ready yet. You got to have like the new Mac OS installed, and it's in beta form, and it's all it's so exciting because it's like so fresh.
What do you think will accelerate that, getting to the consumer? Is it gaming? Is it entertainment? Is it something, something else that's gonna, or?
Entertainment, certainly. Anything that uses, I was gonna say video, but Apple is really making a bet on the future of interactive entertainment. So VR and AR. Right now, they're all in with AR because they haven't made a VR headset yet, but obviously they are working on one. It's an open secret. Maybe it'll come out in a year, maybe it'll be 5 years, who knows? But the thing that's going to drive the evolution of these tools are what consumers want to use the most. So right now, most consumers, they want to watch stuff on a screen. That includes movies, shows, YouTube, whatever. It's that type of media. And so the tools that make that media better are the ones that are getting evolved right now. But we are seeing a very, very fast growth in the VR and AR sectors. So I imagine the tools for there are also going to start growing pretty rapidly soon as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And this may start fights, but I mean, Facebook has had this, their, thing for a long time, the visual math, but there you go.
There it is.
Yeah. So why is this not adopted by everyone? Is it already past its freshness date, or why has
When
that
you say
not
this,
caught on?
are you referring to like VR headsets?
Yeah. Like why isn't there one in every house?
I think there will be in the not too distant future. It'll be as common as cell phones are today. And we're not there yet because I think you have to reach a certain critical threshold of availability, and that mainly revolves around price. Right now, I think we're actually in the middle of the first explosion of VR headsets becoming mainstream because the Oculus Quest 2 is a $300 headset. That is now within the reasonable range of a casual average consumer, at least in America, to be like, you know what, I have just enough money to buy a VR headset, finally get into VR. And I think that's just going to get cheaper and cheaper until the point where it's like, why don't you have a VR headset, dude? It's like $50. Just like, here, I'm going to get one for you now. Just, here you go. And of course, the $50 headsets are not going to be that good. There's still going to be the price range, kind of like we see with phones and laptops and computers. There's always like kind of a price range they stay within to be as good as they possibly can while cheap enough for everyone to buy. But yeah, as the technology gets better, as the prices come down, we're going to see the supply really start to explode. So I think we're just beginning to see that. Because 2 years ago, there's like barely any headsets out there. Then the Quest 1 came out and people were like, okay, cool. But it was still kind of expensive. It wasn't until the Quest 2 came out that suddenly the actual total user base of VR headsets like doubled, tripled, quadrupled. I'm making up those numbers. I don't actually know. But it's in that range of like it's explosive growth if you're charting it out over time.
I have a thought on something that might compete with this in the near future. Like imagine you got the set of The Mandalorian, right? So you're an actor surrounded by an environment that's been created by very talented artists that a live action camera is recording you in that environment, making it look like you're really in there. But imagine, like I would love to have that surrounding me in my living room right here, right now, right? But imagine having that at an affordable level, or I imagine it's going to be a fortune, right? But imagine that's what you're interacting with. So instead of wearing the environment on your head, it's actually a couple feet away from you, projected on a wall. And it's aware of where you're looking and where you want to head and where you want to go. And that may take the form of places we go to, like to do that kind of entertainment. But it might show up, in our houses too. So
I think that is
if the planet boils and we can't go outside, it might be a thing we actually need to know what it was like to go on a nice stroll on a cool afternoon.
I'm not kidding. That is literally one of the opening lines of my solar panels video, is that the air is too hot and toxic to go outside.
Yeah.
In the future. So yeah, I mean, the idea of like having like video walls.
Surround video walls?
Like on all sides. There's a couple pieces of pop culture I could think of. I think the first one was Fahrenheit 451, the Ray Bradbury book back in the day. He used it as an example of, wow, the world sucks. But I think it's great. And I think even more recently than that, there was this movie called Sunshine, and it had Chris Evans in it. And there's a VR room scene that he's in. And he goes in and he has a VR scene around him without the headset. He's just looking at the walls. And the only way for that to work, at least with object tracking, is that it has to know where your head is or where your eyes are at all times. And then, of course, that doesn't even take into account how do you see the 3D aspect. So Just right off the bat, though, that's not really going to work if you have more than 2 people in the same room. So it's not really going to be very social, I guess. In fact, unless these are solvable problems.
If the other person's in the next room over or the next pod over, and the pods put you together in the environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? But
who knows, right? Who knows what we're going to be able to figure out? Let's figure out how to do more VR headsets rather than how to remove carbon from the atmosphere. Yeah,
there you
humanity.
Go. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. Cool stuff.
Yeah, I also feel like that. Someone made this, in the chat that it's, a lot of this technology is there and then it's gone. So that's another thing too. It's, people are just like, oh, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? So,
or something, it's there, but it doesn't take off. And then it does finally become big, right? Like QuickTime VR from the 1990s, right? It kind of was around for a little bit and then disappeared almost completely. And then VR video.
Yeah, 2 decades later.
Maybe it was a timing thing or people were finally ready for it. Who knows?
It's always got to be like the right mix of ingredients.
Yeah.
Of like the right technological advancement and the right like price of parts to make it possible. That was what started the whole VR revolution, is that, all of our cell phones have these little accelerometers and magnetometers and all that stuff inside of them that like suddenly head tracking became something that you can do without having to spend $20,000. So, a lot of this technology that was developed with the idea that maybe consumers are going to love this stuff. 3D TVs. 3D viewing is an awesome experience. Everyone's going to want a 3D TV. They put all this money into figuring out how to make a TV that is 3D without needing glasses, and then no one buys it because no one wants a 3D TV. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then 3D TVs disappeared. But the technology used to develop them is still sitting there, ready to be used anytime someone in the future sees a use for it.
Yeah. I also feel like the content that people are trying to get at is another, drive of that as well. It's, when DVDs and Netflix was, doing all their stuff, and if people still wanted DVDs and that type of thing, it's like, that died out. But it's like when they started doing original programming, like people started wanting their service for original programming where that wasn't there. So it's like also to get to that content, I think is a big driver of what people are interested in as well.
You're totally right. Like content is the thing that is going to drive hardware, right? You have hardware to consume content, but if you have hardware that doesn't have any content, that hardware is going to die. That was kind of a big problem with 3D TVs, for instance, or, insert whatever thing that died. There's just not enough stuff to, use. And that's why, when video game developers, console developers, like they put out a new, game console, and you have launch titles. If you didn't have any launch titles, it's like, what's the point? Why would I get it? I'm not just gonna sit there.
Yep. Nadia, I think you had a question from before that might have gotten.
I did.
Yeah, Nadia, how are we doing on your list of questions? You had a couple.
Oh yeah.
More questions. Well, let's look at the chat. Let's see if anybody has any questions in here. Hello.
I would like to make more VR content though, like 3D stuff specifically. I've always been in love with. Like back when everyone was like, I don't like 3D stuff. I'm like, I love 3D movies. Every movie I go see is 3D. I have a 3D TV. It's a projector. It requires glasses, and I ended up never really using it because it didn't work. But I like the ideas. So I actually have a 3D camera made by Insta360 that is essentially just 2 lenses stuck together in one little camera. And it records, 2 180-degree images that are at the correct distance between your eyes so that when you view the content in VR, it looks like you're looking at reality. That lineup really is compelling, in my opinion. And so I started experimenting with that a little bit. But at the end of the day, if there's not really anyone
right?
Well, yeah. And it's like, if there's no one who's going to be able to even watch that, like I put that camera on one of my drones and flew it around last fall, like right after the Quest came out. But like literally maybe like a dozen people could have been able to watch what I had just put an entire weekend's worth of effort into making. So it's not really a sustainable thing from like a content creation as a business platform standpoint right now. Hopefully that changes soon because I would love to do it.
Any questions, Nadia, that you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, I just had one, but they're coming in so fast.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Wren, you're super popular. Did you know this?
That's not always the case.
In your video,
here's one from Mr. Ant's studio. It says, Wren, are you still learning Houdini?
Kind of. So we actually just hired on a new artist at Corridor. His name is Jordan, and he's got around like 2 years of experience with Houdini. So I imagine I'll probably start using Houdini more just because I'll have him there to help me walk through things. But also at the same time, now we have a Houdini artist. He can do all that stuff. The short answer is I would love to continue learning Houdini, but I started realizing that everything I could possibly want to do in Houdini, most of that I can just do in Cinema 4D using the tools I already know how to use, or the tools that I am slowly getting better at using. And yeah, over the last, basically since the start of this year, I put a big focus on trying to get better at CG rendering and animation and just that whole workflow. And so that effort has really started to pay off in Cinema 4D. And, I've got like a nice computer now at home that I can actually work on, because before I got this like in December, and my old computer I built in 2013, in January of 2013. And so it was very old to the point that I just stopped trying to make stuff because I didn't want to have to wait so long for renders or to have to reboot the computer because it crashed. And I realized I was not making as much art. So when I got this new computer, this is actually a Puget Systems computer, I found myself making way more art just in my free time, and extra time for work here at home because I could. And suddenly I found my skills rapidly getting better. And I found my need to use Houdini decreasing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, having just this, having a nice computer at home, even though I already use a nice computer at work, was a big enabler in becoming a better artist.
Nice.
Okay, we have another question here from David. He says, what do you want to see in the future of VX?
In the future of VFX?
It says VX. I'm assuming VFX, yeah.
Or we could be talking about VEX, which is a Houdini thing, I think. Actually, I don't know. I'm going to assume he meant VFX. What do I want to see in the future of VFX? Well, like I was talking about earlier, a lot of that machine learning stuff, things that I want to be able to do just simplified so that I can just be able to create stuff faster, be able to put stuff out faster. My level of ambition is always going to stay the same, but as the tools become more advanced and what I'm able to create becomes simpler, I can make more stuff. I can make more ambitious stuff that previously would have taken too much effort. So what I'd like to see is just, more of those tools.
Sweet. All right. Any more questions?
I can look through the chat and see some of these questions.
Yeah.
So you mentioned in your video, you mentioned practical engineering. Is that a website?
Yeah. It's a YouTube channel.
It's a YouTube channel. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then the thingy something for 3D models. What was that again?
Thingiverse.
Thingiverse.
So, thingy with an I. Thingiverse.com. Honestly, they're not even the best website for 3D printing. They just kind of happen to stumble into it from the beginning, so they're the biggest. But there's lots of websites out there that have 3D models that you can download. That's another thing. So from all of our visual effects and CG work over the last decade, I'd say the vast majority of the time we have a 3D model, we didn't actually model it. There are marketplaces for 3D models that we can download for free or buy. Right. Sometimes they're not that expensive. Sometimes they are expensive, depending on the project. That cost is warranted. And it's what I've done is I've gotten really good at being able to modify 3D models. I've gotten good at texturing and rendering things, and having that availability of models out there that I can download for pretty much anything I want has just made all this stuff possible. Like that Attack on Titan video, for instance. A couple of the models were just ones that I downloaded. Another couple were ones that people in the community had modeled and were able to offer up for me to use. So none of that was stuff that I actually modeled. It's just, yeah.
Wow.
Okay, another
then,
one. You mentioned Runway ML.
Mm-hmm.
What was that again?
So Runway ML is like a, I don't know how exactly to describe it. It's kind of like a platform for machine learning models, like for other people to upload their own models so that they can utilize the platform to help train their model, because other people who are also on the platform can use it and supply their own content. Because the thing about machine learning models is that you need lots and lots and lots of training.
You need lots of input. Yeah.
Exactly. And so Runway ML helps facilitate that input by allowing lots of different models to just exist on their platform. So in the video about Pixar's Up, I basically describe how many balloons would you actually need to lift the house from Up. And it turns out it was a lot, like Pixar took some liberties when it comes to physics. And that was basically the whole premise of the video. Like, all right, if it was realistic, what would it actually look like? And in that video, I used the example of the Hindenburg as, because it was filled with pure hydrogen, because that's lighter than helium. But of course, it blew up. And so as that example, I pulled old footage of the Hindenburg, and using Runway ML, there's a colorization model that I was able to literally just upload, because it's all black and white. I was like, I uploaded it and colorize. Suddenly, all of the footage came
back as a full color image. Yeah.
And pretty good too. Like, not perfect, but like it knew it could separate the fire from the metal, from the water, from the ground and grass, and all these colors that it just like, that's probably grass, or that's probably fire. Color it fire colored. And I downloaded that. And so when I put that in the video, that was kind of, in essence, original video, even though I was using video shot, I don't know how long ago that was, 80, 100 years ago. Yeah, about around 80, I think. And it's just, that was just one random little model on Runway ML. And all that stuff like runs in the browser too. You don't need any special program. It's just browser based.
Right, you just drop your footage right into it, right?
You can do it from a laptop.
And then you get it back.
Yeah.
So you talk a lot about, doing all-nighters, and like, you seem so energetic to me. It's like, do you even get burnout? Like, how do you not get burnt out? What do you do about it?
I do get burnout. I have burned out probably at least 4 times in the last 10 years working at Corridor, where it's just like, it's anytime I'm doing the same thing for too long. There's a stretch of time, I forget when, maybe 2017, 2018, somewhere in that time frame, when we were putting out lots of short films on the Corridor channel. Every 2 weeks there's a new short film, and my job was basically just doing the visual effects for those films. And I would just bounce from one to the next, and pretty much by the time I was done working on the effects of one video, the next video was ready to be edited and effects thrown on, and so I'd immediately switch back into that. And so at the end of that, I just started being like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to. And so there have definitely been times where I've had to have talks with the guys of like, how do we shake things up? How do we do something different? And that was kind of where this whole like sciencey scale video series that I do now kind of came from. It was just like, I had an idea one day of how can I utilize these few specific skill sets that I've been building upon. Like, there's the engineering side of understanding science. There's the visual effects side of being able to create shots. And third, there's the side of me being on camera that I've learned how to do. Back in the early days of me being on camera, I sucked. I was so cringy. Do not ever look up anything I posted from 10 years ago. I didn't know how to be on camera. No,
you had to start somewhere.
Yeah. And it's, it's not like a vain type of thing. It's not like I learned how to act on camera. It kind of just comes down to like, I figured out how to be myself on camera, which is not easy to do. Most people, you stick a camera in front of them and suddenly they're a completely different person. And a skill that I've learned through being on the Corridor channel for the last, however many years, is that I kind of learned how to be able to be myself while there's a camera filming me. And so I combined those few things, and I made a video about how big rockets are. and people liked it. I liked it. I was super proud of the output, and then I just kind of kept making them. And so, yeah. And then, you know, even then I kind of started getting burnt out on making those videos. And so last year, 2020, obviously there are other things going on in the world, but I started kind of focusing more on 3D printing and builds and stuff like that. And now this year, I've kind of gone back to doing more visual effects. Every year I start kind of focusing on a new like area to get better at. And that I feel is been the thing that reduces burnout, is being able to just kind of like change it up. Because burnout for me comes from doing the same thing for too long. So.
Got it.
Yeah. Yeah, you found your voice, is what you're saying. And I mean, that's that's I think when it makes it so much easier when you finally find your voice, and it's not a chore. You're not inside your head all the time.
Yeah, yeah, and it's been great. And because these videos that I've been making have been doing well, I've gotten to make more. Like, I have no preconceived notions of being able to do these videos if they didn't get any views, if people didn't like them. So the fact that, you know, they're good enough that people enjoy them enough to continue watching them is literally the reason why I get to continue doing it. So I'm very thankful.
Awesome.
Aww, so nice. Cool. I think we're gonna wrap it up. I mean, we've been chatting on here for an hour.
We have been going for a while. You know, wait, I was supposed to announce this at the beginning.
Oh, okay.
We can't tell Adobe that I forgot, but our main sponsor is Adobe Systems Incorporated, and I sign a contract every year. So I'm contractually obligated to announce that, but I'm also very happy to do it because, you know, DMALA, we are an all volunteer group, right? So it's Adobe support is key to we're keeping this thing going. Oh.
Yo, shout out to Adobe. I love After Effects.
Same.
You're here.
Alrighty, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this month's DMALA, and thanks to Puget Systems and Adobe Systems for making this month's DMALA happen. Join us next month for more digital media fun, and have a good weekend, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming out.